And where does it stop with Donald Trump and his cronies? It don't stop. It does not stop. Donald Trump is hiring people that are unqualified, absolute people that's just as dumb as he is.
𝐸𝐫𝐫. Trump appointed her to be the interim U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, despite a complete lack of qualifications for the job and a history of saying things like this.
Somebody said to me, Alina, would you rather be smart or pretty? And I said, oh, easy, pretty. I can fake being smart.
I don't know if you can, Alina. That's the thing. Now, U.S. attorneys are really not supposed to be lackeys for the president, just to state the obvious. There's only 93 of them across the country. And under the law, Trump could only make 𝐸𝐫𝐫 or anyone else who's in this position interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. After that 120 days was up, judges for the Federal District Court in New Jersey, they got to decide whether or not to keep her in that job. And those judges chose not to let 𝐸𝐫𝐫 keep serving as U.S. attorney, choosing another prosecutor to replace her. And then the Trump administration abruptly fired 𝐸𝐫𝐫's replacement and took advantage of a loophole in the law to put 𝐸𝐫𝐫 back in the job. They essentially made 𝐸𝐫𝐫𝐫 her own assistant so that once the job was open, she could step in and fill the role, even though her time is up. It's a completely blatant end run around the normal process for making sure that U.S. attorneys are qualified and impartial prosecutors. And the Trump administration is doing this to install loyalists as U.S. attorneys all across the country. In the Northern District of New York, Trump appointed a man named 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 to be the interim U.S. attorney. Just like 𝐸𝐫𝐫𝐫, he served for 120 days, after which the judges in that district chose to kick him out of that job. And just like 𝐸𝐫𝐫𝐫, the Trump administration kept him in that job by making him his own assistant. What a trick. Same thing in Nevada. Trump appointed a member of the Republican National Committee for the nonpartisan role of U.S. attorney. More than 100 retired federal and state judges wrote the court opposing her nomination specifically. But Trump used a similar trick to keep her in that role as well. And then there's Trump's pick to be the U.S. attorney in the Central District of California, a former Republican state lawmaker with a long history as a bit of a conservative crusader. Now, since taking that job, he has brought federal charges against a California union leader arrested in an ICE protest. He stood idly by during the violent detention of U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, who was tackled to the ground trying to ask a question at a press conference. He's pushed prosecutors to bring more cases against immigrants, even when those cases lack evidence. Under 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐫, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Central California has already lost a third of its career staff. No wonder why. And just today, his office dropped a fraud case against a fast food chain owner and major Trump donor who the Justice Department has called a serial tax cheat. Now the Trump administration has used that same trick to keep him in that job as well. There are 93 U.S. attorneys serving in all 50 states plus U.S. territories. They are the ones in charge of prosecuting any federal crime that happens within their jurisdiction. Medicaid fraud, financial crimes, even terrorism cases all end up on the desk of U.S. attorneys. That's why that job is supposed to be completely apolitical. But Trump is taking unprecedented steps to put his own handpicked people in at least some of those key jobs. And they all know that to keep those jobs, they will need to be loyal foot soldiers for Trump. Trump's own personal attorneys have provided them all the example and role modeling that they need. Joining me now is one of my favorite legal minds, probably one of yours too. He's Andrew Weissmann. You know he's a former FBI general counsel and former assistant U.S. attorney, as well as an MSNBC legal analyst. Okay, Andrew, there are so many things I want to ask you about. I just want to start with the Bovee news because he was just confirmed in about the last 15 minutes. You understand very well the importance of the Third Circuit Court specifically. I believe you've brought cases there. What are the consequences of Bovee sitting on that bench for a lifetime appointment?
Well, I think one has to zoom out and think about this in terms of what it says about checks and balances in this country. The fact that Congress, if you needed any more proof that Congress is asleep at the switch and has become sort of a lapdog to Donald Trump, at least the Republican-controlled Congress, this is an example. This is not a normal candidate, and the amount of proof as to why he is unfit is sort of overwhelming. And second, if you think about that in terms of what has happened to one check, which is Congress, this is another attack on the only other branch that it has served to be a check, which is the courts. And you either can try and intimidate them. You can file complaints, as they did just yesterday, against the chief judge in D.C., Judge Boasberg, or you can try and sort of pack the courts, which is what you're doing with this nomination that's now been confirmed. And so I think if you just think about it in terms of checks and balances, this is a nail in the coffin of that system that we have had for over 200 years in this country. And he is really exhibit A. In some ways, I might say exhibit Z to this, because there have been so many, but I think that's what it means to me tonight.
Yeah, it's putting it in stark terms, but those are required. Let me ask you, I mean, because one of the other things I know you've been following, we've been following, I just talked a lot about, is just this end run on U.S. attorneys and putting them in place in acting positions. And New Jersey, 𝐿ENA, of course, is the example in New Jersey. Everybody's heard of her, knows her name, and there's been some real consequences already. I mean, a defendant has sued to get his case thrown out, pretrial conferences and hearings set for defendants to enter pleas were called off. There's a lot of things happening. According to Politico, there are about 1,500 criminal cases in the District of New Jersey a year. I'm sure it fluctuates, but help us understand. That's been a day or a few days. What could happen if she insists and they insist in keeping her in this job?
So in all of the districts that you mentioned, Jen, where they've done this sort of end run, there is zero reason, if you are defense counsel for a defendant who's now been charged, not to bring a challenge saying that this is not a duly authorized U.S. attorney and that this is legally questionable. So there will be that litigation. But again, if you step back again, Jen, just to the norm here, it is unheard of that the judges do not just confirm and sort of go along with the person who served for the first 120 days. That's true of every administration. I've served in so many Republican and Democratic administrations. The judges don't play politics in this. They're not concerned about the policy of the U.S. attorney as long as the person's qualified. So the big take home here is not just the end run, which will be legally challenged. It's the idea that these people were so unqualified that really, I think for the first time that I'm aware of in history, you have the judges saying, no, we're not actually going to go along with this because the person simply is not qualified to do this job. They're unfit for the position.
That is a really stunning thing. And it's an important reminder that that's not normal. I mean, these judges have decided they don't want to continue with a number of these U.S. attorneys Trump has named. It's also what it sounds like you're saying is that in all of these cases, and there could be more because other people could hit 120 days, defense attorneys might question whether or not they should move forward with cases.
Sure. Look, I've been a defense lawyer. There's zero reason not to question it and to have the courts rule in the various districts. I mean, there's zero downside for it. You may not win, but it's certainly against the spirit of the law, if not the letter of the law. And that's the kind of thing that you can bring to the courts and let them decide whether this was done appropriately. But again, even if the courts were to say that legally the Trump administration could do this end run, what does it tell you about the qualifications and what is going on? The big picture of these people are so unqualified that you have judges of all stripes, of all political persuasions saying, we're not going to go along with this. To me, that is sort of the take home for the American public.
Andrew Weissman, thank you as always for providing lots of direct clarity. Really appreciate you joining me tonight. Thank you again.
The heck does that mean? It simply means one thing. Donald Trump is again hiring people who don't have qualifications, just as he's the president without qualifications.